It's been a confusing few weeks for anyone on a fixed income, especially if you've been hearing all the talk about a possible $2,000 tariff dividend check. If you're on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, VA benefits, or you're a low-income worker trying to keep your head above water, you've probably wondered whether any of this is real and what it could mean for your wallet. The president has talked about sending out thousands of dollars next year, and now he's even mentioned a timeline. But there are still huge questions about whether these payments can actually happen, who would qualify, and how realistic this plan really is. Today, we're going to break all of that down in a simple, calm way so you know exactly what's real, what isn't, and what you should and shouldn't count on. I've gone through the latest statements from the president, the Treasury Department, and multiple budget experts so you don't have to dig through all the political promises and confusing numbers. My goal is always to help you understand what these updates truly mean for your benefits, your bills, and your peace of mind. There's a lot of noise out there, but you deserve clarity, not hype. Let me paint a picture of something I've heard from so many people lately. A woman wrote in saying she's retired, living on Social Security, and she's barely getting by month to month. When she heard about these $2,000 checks, her first thought was how much it would help her catch up on prescriptions, a couple overdue utility bills, maybe even put a little aside for emergencies. And then, almost immediately, she said she felt scared to hope because every time something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. A lot of you probably feel that same mix of hope and worry. That's why it's so important to understand the facts before planning around money that isn't guaranteed. So here's what we're going to walk through together. We'll talk about the president's claim that most Americans will receive at least $2,000 per person from tariff revenue. We'll look at who he says would qualify and how that compares to the numbers experts are putting out. We'll go over the timeline he mentioned for mid-2026, the doubts coming from his own Treasury Secretary, and why congressional approval is likely required. We'll also get into how this might affect people on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, VA disability, or working families relying on SNAP. And then we'll talk honestly about the financial reality behind these claims so you can make steady, practical decisions for yourself. For retirees on Social Security, a payment like this would feel like a lifeline, especially with groceries, rent, and medical costs still climbing. For people on SSI or SSDI, even a one-time boost could mean replacing an old appliance, fixing a car, or covering medication you've been putting off. Veterans on VA benefits could use the extra money to catch up on appointments or manage copays. And families using SNAP or struggling with childcare costs might finally feel like they can exhale for a moment. But the key question is whether anything close to that amount of money is actually coming. Here's the simple explanation of where this idea comes from. The president has said repeatedly that tariffs are bringing in so much money that the government can start paying down the national debt and still send people a dividend check of at least $2,000 per person, excluding high-income households. More recently, he said these payments would be for moderate and middle-income Americans. But here's the challenge. Independent budget groups estimate the government would need around $600 billion a year to fund checks of that size. Current tariff revenue is nowhere close to that. One major nonpartisan budget group puts tariff revenue at about $100 billion a year, and some experts say it's even lower when you subtract the costs Americans pay because tariffs raise prices. This is where things get complicated. The Treasury Secretary was asked directly whether these checks will really happen, and his answer was, "We will see." He also said Congress would likely need to pass legislation to authorize the payments. That means even if the administration wants to do it, it can't just happen automatically. Congress would have to agree, the funding would have to exist, and the math would have to work, and right now, none of those pieces are in place. Even so, the president has now said he expects the checks to go out sometime in mid-2026. That's the closest thing to a timeline we've heard so far. But because there's no legislation yet, and because the revenue does not match the cost, experts are urging people not to plan their budgets around this announcement. It's okay to stay curious and hopeful, but not to rely on money that isn't guaranteed, especially when your monthly bills don't wait for Congress or politics. The honest truth is that these checks, if they ever happen, would bring real relief to millions of households. Having a little extra room each month could mean buying healthier food, catching up on medical appointments, or finally addressing those bills that have been hanging over your head. Even a one-time payment can make a difference when you're living on Social Security or SSI and every dollar is stretched to the limit. But we also need to look at the challenges so you can prepare without disappointment. One issue is that some benefit programs have income rules. If a one-time payment counts as income in your state or under your specific program, it could affect things like Medicaid, housing support, or SNAP for that month. Many programs ignore one-time payments, but not all of them do. Another challenge is that even $2,000, while helpful, may not keep pace with rising rent or medical costs for very long. I want you to have a realistic picture so you can make the best choices for your situation. If you're wondering what you can do right now, here are a few practical steps that won't cost you anything. Make sure your payment information is up to date with Social Security, the VA, or the IRS so you don't run into delays if anything new is approved. If you rely on programs with income limits, keep an eye on any updates from your state or county so you know how a future payment might be treated. If you haven't checked your online account in a while, logging in just once can help you catch issues before they become problems. And if you're struggling to cover food or utilities, this is a good moment to look into additional programs you may qualify for, even temporarily. Many people are eligible for help they've never applied for, including energy assistance, discounted internet, or supplemental food benefits. Sometimes the smallest bit of breathing room can change everything. I want to give you a few examples because so many of you write in with stories like these. A senior living alone on Social Security told me that a one-time boost helped her replace her broken refrigerator, which finally allowed her to buy real groceries again instead of relying on quick, expensive snacks. A veteran said a small extra payment meant he could afford the travel costs to get to his medical appointments on time. A single parent shared that a little unexpected help let her buy school supplies and a winter coat for her daughter without having to choose between that and paying the electric bill. These are everyday situations, but they show how even modest financial relief can make life feel a little less heavy. And I want to take a moment to speak directly to you if you're feeling worn down by all of this. Whether it's Social Security, SSI, SSDI, VA benefits, SNAP, or simply working long hours for pay that just isn't keeping up, none of this is your fault. Needing help doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means you're trying to survive in an economy where everything seems to cost more every month. Millions of people are in the same situation, and there's nothing shameful about using every resource available to give yourself a little bit of stability. Staying informed is one of the smartest things you can do, and being here already tells me you care about protecting your future. So as the conversation around these possible tariff checks continues, I'll keep tracking every official update, every statement from the administration, and every expert analysis so you always know what's real and what's just talk. Even small updates can matter when you're budgeting down to the dollar. And remember, things can change quickly, sometimes for the better, so staying connected really does improve your chances of catching opportunities in time. If you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an update about Social Security, SSI, SSDI, VA benefits, SNAP, stimulus programs, or any big changes that could affect your payments. And if you know someone else who's struggling or wondering about these rumored checks, share this with them so they don't miss important information. We're all in this together, and nobody deserves to feel alone trying to figure these things out.